We appreciate you taking the time to learn more about our new security gateway, the ESG 510. You'll hear me say ESG probably a lot through this webinar, so just bear with me. I'm just abbreviating. But it stands for EnGenius Security Gateway, and then 510 has something to do with the port number and so on. So today we'll be talking about the EnGenius Cloud solution as a whole. Don't worry, I won't go into great depth on that portion. I will be talking about the EnGenius Security Gateway, the spec really, and then some of the features, and then we'll do a bit of a deeper dive into the ESG's features, and then open it up for any the Q&A. I'll then, I just want to note that I will go in and out of the Cloud Web GUI and the mobile app, so bear with me as I jump around into different, into the interface, into the Cloud app interface. But I want to make sure I show everybody what we're working on and what we're getting ready to fully deliver to our customers. So just another note, this will be really a preliminary view of the cloud interface, because there will be more to come when the gateway actually starts shipping. So you'll actually see add-ons to our feature adds within the interface as we move forward. So with that said, I'll go ahead and get started. So you're already aware of, hopefully you're aware of our wireless equipment. We're one of the first companies to deliver Wi-Fi 6. We have security access points now, and now we have a Wi-Fi 6E, which is 6 gigahertz. We're one of the first companies to deliver that particular product. I do want to make sure you stay tuned in for a new 4x4 Wi-Fi 6 outdoor access point, which will be the ECW 270. But you should be aware that we can already manage our access points under our cloud, our EnGenius Cloud networking solution. We also offer gigabit switching. We've been offering that for about 10 years now. I don't know, Eddie, if you can correct me on that. It's about 10 years, somewhere around there. We now offer multi-gig, which is 2.5 gig per port and 10 gigabit port. Soon we will offer small form factors, 4 and 5 port switches and PoE switches. So look out for that. And very shortly, or very soon, we'll have an aggregate fiber switch. That will probably come by the end of this year, maybe even sooner. Next year, we are looking into offering a layer 3 switch as well. So all these devices will be a cloud managed system, or will fall under the cloud networking management system. And now we'll be offering a cloud managed security gateway. So we're really headed into layer 3. This will be our first L3 product for the cloud lineup. So this gateway is a router, it's a firewall, it's basically a VPN concentrator. So we're offering all these things under this one EnGenius Cloud interface or management system. So very exciting to be able to provide something like that. So it really turns into one full solution, and we try to really simplify a lot of things on how you configure. So simplicity is really the ultimate sophistication, really, right? Your company's workflow will get a whole lot easier and safer, we hope. Secure business data and workforce with our newly launched EnGenius Gateway. So we're really expanding on our cloud solution. We're now offering a single cloud end-to-end solution. So one place to onboard your hardware, to configure, to fine-tune, to monitor, and to maintain your network gear under this management platform. So one vendor to support you through our chat, our sales support, or remote assistance. So we're hoping this will minimize calling multiple vendors. This will minimize the availability issues you may be having with other vendors. And so we're trying to put everything under one umbrella to our customers, so we can support you as a partner and also your customers as well. So really being able to work with a vendor that can provide a full scope of network gear, and that's where we're trying to go to. So the EnGenius Cloud offers a a really simple management system for access from anywhere. We are putting everything under one umbrella. Like I said before, you can access all your EnGenius Cloud devices either through a cloud interface or our intuitive mobile app. I will, like I said before, I will jump into the cloud interface. I think most of you are really familiar with the cloud interface, and I will also jump into the mobile app. As long as my mirroring app works really well, I'll be able to show that to you as well. So we're further unifying the EnGenius Cloud solution with this security gateway. So your primary access is the EnGenius Cloud portal. Now you can, like I said, you can see everything under one dashboard. You have more network visibility. It's a really super simple setup. And hopefully at the end of the day, we're helping minimizing truck rolls, I should say. So you can deep dive into your gateway settings. You can deep dive into your switch settings. You can deep dive into your access point settings. And you can even view your client devices as well. So it's been a tremendous tool for us as a company to be able to help our customers and to understand issues, add in features, and a multiple things that we can do within this cloud solution. So we hope to really provide this within this solution and further improve it as we move along. The security gateway will be as simple to onboard as a cloud access point or a cloud switch. So you'll basically simply scan the QR code or punch in the serial number in the inventory list of the cloud interface. When the gateway is assigned, just like an access point or switch, to an org and then to a network, and it's plugged in, it will pull the configurations. It will save the configurations locally to the actual device, and then it will check for the latest firmware update. So the process is very, very similar or the same as a switch or an access point. So let me actually already jump into the app if I can and show you that process really quick. So right now I'm logged into my EnGenius Cloud to Go app. I'm on my particular network. I'm going to register a gateway. Sure, device. And so I'll show you another picture of the gateway, but I'm going to scan it and register. I'll just leave the name as is. Out to the network. And then it's ready to go. So you can see the process is as simple as doing an access point or a switch. So very quick process. We'll go into the cloud interface and see if it actually registered to my network. I'll show you that in just a moment. But just to give you an idea, it's as simple as onboarding an access point or a switch. The gateway does have a local GUI with, but it has minimal settings. Your main access will be through the cloud interface, but you can change WAN 1 or WAN 2 connection type, even proxy settings, or even perform a firmware update. And that's very, very similar to our access points today and our switches. So you do have that local interface that you can access into, just letting you know that that is always there as well. So let's go a little deeper into the ESG. One thing you should note is that you can have a gateway per network in cloud. So you can have several gateways under an organization. So for every network you have in an organization, you can have one gateway. So let's talk about the hardware spec for the actual gateway in itself. The operating frequency is 1.6 gigahertz. It's an Intel processor with a high clock rate. Splitting tasks between 4 cores, so that quad core, faster processing for our firewall, which is stateful packet inspection or dynamic packet inspection, It does have 4 gigabits of memory. So just to give you a point of reference, you can have approximately 1 million max TCP concurrent sessions, 200 max concurrent VPN tunnels, etc. It does have 8 gigabit storage, enough storage for all the logs that we typically look for and debugging any problems, but you do have logs within the system as well. It does have 4 2.5 gigabit ports. Please take note that the WAN ports and LAN ports are 2.5 gigabit. In addition, WAN 2 can also be used as a LAN port, so you can have 3 LAN ports. And one of the LAN ports, P1, does support PoE+. We also have a USB 3.0 interface. That interface is for failover option for cellular dongle. So if you're using, I guess, even 3G, 4G, or 5G, we currently support over 400 types of dongles, but we continue to test dongles as we move forward and add them to, and hopefully create or generate a list that we can share with our customers in regards to what you can use as a failover cellular dongle. We also have a TPM chipset to enhance the security for integrated crypto keys. And then a console port, and the console port really for emergency purposes. But just to give you an idea or further look into the interface in itself, we go to camera really quick. So I just wanted to give you a look at the actual switch. So hopefully this is a good view. Can you see that, Eddie?
Yeah.
Yep. So this is the front view of that of the ESG. Side view and then back view. It is a metal housing. Just to give you a point of reference, here is a 230 stacked on top of that, just to give you an idea. We also have, I have the 220. If you're familiar with these access points, it gives you points, a reference of, you know, the size of the actual device. Even the older 120, the ECW 120 ceiling mount, or traditional, and even the wall plate, just to give you an idea of like reference size. This is I saw a question pop up, so I can answer that question right now. This is not a rack mount, it's a desktop, but we will have a rack mount, just so you know. So just to give you an idea of what it looks like, semi in virtual reality, or no, not virtual reality. This is just live. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, just a quick note that WAN 2, again, I wanted to quickly note while showing it, I forgot, WAN 2 can be a LAN port, and P1 is PoE+. So just a quick note on that, just so you know or remember. Okay, the ESG 510 will support many features, and we'll discuss some of these in a little more detail. But it does have 2 modes. It supports routing and pass-through mode. The ESG supports one-to-one or one-to-many NAT. Also supports VLAN setup. Any of the interfaces can have VLANs. I think Eddie, Peter, and myself are really excited about that because we've sat on many calls working with different techs and configure a VLAN. So this really gives us visibility into the configurations of the gateway. So this is really something very exciting for us in regards to on the technical support side. So it will have 2 WAN ports. Either can be set to primary. It does have load balancing. We're using weighted round robin to balance the traffic. And as I mentioned before, there's a stateful firewall. Well, it will monitor active connections and check whether incoming data packets correspond to those connections. Like I said, it has cellular failover. The secondary WAN port can be used as a failover, but you can also have a cellular failover as well. We do support site-to-site VPN and client VPN, and we'll dive into those items a little bit deeper to show you more. So when using the ESG units, you can easily create VPN connections. It's really just clicking a couple of things in the menu to create a VPN connection, a site-to-site VPN connection, and a client VPN connection as well. We have something called Auto Mesh VPN. We also implemented this to monitor in the cloud to make sure the VPN connections stay active. And if the ISP changes the WAN, it will self-heal or self-correct itself. So those VPN connections stay up. We also have captive portal. So when you're configuring a LAN port, you can set up captive portal. You can set up a splash page. You can even set up bandwidth limits on the individual interfaces. So I'll show you that as well as we move through this. So let's talk about operation modes first. The ESG has two operation modes, routed and pass-through. And this will be dependent really on the environment and the usage. So routed is by default. The ESG is a router, and it will use NAT to translate traffic. So the ESG will route between different VLANs, as it should, right? We will also have a pass-through mode. This allows the ESG to basically be to bridge traffic, like an L2 bridge. And it won't translate the client traffic, but it can act as a firewall or a VPN concentrator in an existing network that has a router. So let's talk about that a little more. I believe most understand what I mean by routed mode. So let's discuss the pass-through mode. Very simple concept. I think a lot of people understand, but just to really highlight that this is another mode that you can use the ESG in. So in some cases where administrators that want to use their existing router and they want to implement just a staple firewall or a VPN concentrator, the ESG can easily be inserted inline to an existing network as a bridge using pass-through mode to provide that staple firewall or a VPN concentrator. The admin will not have to change their original IP plan, but the traffic flowing through the ESG will be protected by the firewall, or they can use that VPN function to create site-to-site VPNs, for example. And you can use multiple ESGs across multiple networks to connect those different sites, or use it, VPN to client VPN. The ESG has 4 ports on those. I think first, an important note is all ports, both WAN and LAN on this gateway, are 2.5 gigabit interfaces. So I think that's really important to understand. Some of our competitors out there don't offer that, but we do. You can simply configure a WAN port through the cloud interface. You first choose the operation mode, like I said, routed or pass-through. You can easily enable the WAN 1 port. You can also enable the WAN 2 port if needed for failover or to load balance between 1 and 2. And then you can enable the cellular connection for failover as well. And then you can enable DDNS on top of that. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into that area. So we want to make the WAN configuration as simple as possible and straightforward. So to configure a WAN port, you simply use routed mode, enable 1 and or 2. You can choose either, like I said, WAN 1 or both WAN 1 and 2. You can then set the primary WAN if WAN 2 is also enabled, and then you can set your failover. You can then choose that if you'd like, or you can set load balancing, and I'll jump to the web interface as well. Or you can enable load balancing or enable cellular for backhaul, and enable DDNS as well if you need to. So just really quick before I jump to the interface, the dual WAN supports failover only when the secondary WAN is enabled and the primary WAN link is active. So when primary link is down, the local traffic will flow through WAN 2. When both WAN links are down, traffic will flow through the cellular link if available. So if you have 3 ISP connections, you have a backup plan. You have a plan B and a plan C. When load balance policy is selected, the traffic will flow through WAN 2 links using weighted round robin. The weight is based on the uplink bandwidths specified by users for the WAN 1 and WAN 2. So let's look into that interface real quick. So I won't dive into too many. I won't go. I'll try to stay within the content of the webinar. I won't dive into too many different things. But this is the updated cloud interface. You've probably already seen references to the gateway. We do have an active gateway running here on this particular network. This is in our lab. You can see that we have gateway, switch, AP, and a client on there. I can now go to monitor, or excuse me, under manage, and then you can see references to gateway. You can also see references to VPN status, and I'll try to dive into those individual items as well. When you go to configure now, you have gateway, and you should take note of EnGenius authentication. This menu changed prior to the gateway becoming live. So just to give you a heads up. So there are some changes under EnGenius authentication, which I may or may not dive into. So let me go to gateway. Under gateway, you have interfaces, site-to-site VPN, client VPN, and firewall. I'm going to go to interfaces. So we were just talking about WAN, so I'll stay within the WAN interface for right now, and then we'll go back into the presentation and then jump back into the LAN, for example. So under WAN, you can change your operating mode. Here's your routed, your pass-through. This is where your WAN setup is. You can then enable WAN 2, for example, and set up your WAN configuration here. Just so you know, the ISP bandwidth is something that you input, and that's something that you will see out throughout the interface, but it's based off your input here. It doesn't auto recognize the actual speed from your ISP. I think that's something that will come, but just a note on that. If you do have the WAN 2 activated, you can then do dual WAN preference. You can choose primary as being WAN 1 or 2. You can do load balancing. You can choose failover or load balance. You can also enable the cellular and then the SIM pen and then other parameters around there, along with DDNS. So we try to make the interface as simple as possible. Now, what I want you to kind of another takeaway, as we move closer and closer to shipping the ESG, which will be shortly, and I'll talk about that near the end, you'll see some configuration changes, not necessarily here, but within the interface. So there will be more added to the interface as we move forward. So just to give you an idea of what that is. So we are currently running this particular gateway, and this is the current configuration of the gateway. I will go to gateway. This is our gateway list. And it will give you high-level information about the gateway, and I can dive into the details of the gateway as well and see some information here. And I'll dive into this, but just wanted to give you a quick view of what that looks like as well. Okay, hopefully that gave you a pretty good idea of what the WAN setup is. You'll hear me say we're trying to simplify multiple things. So WAN setup is one of those things that we wanted to really simplify, and hopefully looking at the interface really quickly, you get a grasp of what this will look like when you start configuring these gateways. To dive in deeper into the LAN interfaces, these are multi-gig LAN interfaces. You can simply configure the LAN ports through the cloud interface. You can either modify an existing LAN. By default, you will have a LAN configured already. You can actually modify that LAN, or you can create new LANs. You then can easily set up addressing DHCP server. Either you're using the local DHCP server, or if you have an external DHCP server, you can then enable captive portal to onboard client devices. And then you have splash page. If you're familiar with our access points, splash page looks very similar. There's templates, and then there's HTML you can use, or WYSIWYG, I should say. And then there's bandwidth limits. So let's go a little bit deeper into that. We tried to make this as easy as an SSID configuration. So for you Wi-Fi guys out there that are very familiar with our access points, and you know our SSID configurations, configuring our LAN interfaces will be as simple, I would say. You know, there's more information you probably should know. For the guys that are using our switches or haven't used our system at all, we believe that this is the simplest method to use when configuring these interfaces. So when we attempted to simplify the process as much as possible. So very similar to configuring our SSIDs. You know, this is almost a mirror image of the two. We have SSID configurations at the top here and then LAN configurations at the bottom. So you can see you work through the menu as you configure the SSIDs. The same thing with the LAN interfaces. So you're adding a LAN interface and then you're modifying the LAN interface by going through these menus. We try to make that as simple as possible. Routing is automatic when a new VLAN interface is created. You can use the ESG DHCP server or an external DHCP server. Client IP addressing is straightforward for each VLAN. Admins can set up user login or authentication by defining the click-through or the ESG radius, for example, or an external radius. So you have different methods of authenticating users going through this gateway. You also can do bandwidth per VLAN or even bandwidth per client, and that can be quickly defined under this menu. So you can easily add a LAN interface, set up the VLAN with automatic routing, simplify the addressing with a DHCP or an external DHCP, define click-through or radius authentication, and then redirect an external splash page or create a new one, and then enable the limits per VLAN or per client. So let's see if I can jump to that really quick. Eddie, let me know if you don't see a screen that I'm highlighting here.
Yeah, I see this.
So if I go back to configure, gateway, interfaces, we were just in WAN, gave you a quick view of WAN. Let me jump to LAN. So you'll notice by default, we provide a LAN for you and there's some configurations here. I can actually click on the LAN or I can delete the LAN. I can click and modify, or I can add. Very similar to what you would see when you go into our SSID configurations. When you create a new or modify, you have these submenus: addressing, DHCP, captive portal, splash page, bandwidth. So under addressing, there's a multiple things that you can do, like naming the LAN port, enabling it, IP addressing. If you're setting up VLAN, what the VLAN ID is, you're clicking a drop down. If you're using VPN, you would enable the VPN right here, and then you can select your ports from here. And I won't make any changes so Peter doesn't get mad at me. Under DHCP, you have client addressing. You can run a DHCP server, you can disable it, or you can relay it to other subnet DHCP server. And then DNS servers as well. You can just plug in the DNS servers as well here. And then settings, you can reserve IP range or have a fixed IP list. And then more advanced settings like lease times and so on can be found under here as well. Under captive portal, you can easily do a click-through or you can do a custom radius. If you enable it, you have to enable it first, and then you can implement these different authentication types. And from maybe your experience with cloud, you will start to see more and more authentication types within this menu. So just, you know, as you go through this, as you go through the cloud interface, the really nice thing that a lot of our customers have corresponded with us or reported is that they go in and they'll see a new feature, and it's, you know, it's really exciting to go in and see new features pop up and something that you can utilize in your deployments. So I imagine more authentication types will become more active as we move forward. Splash page is very similar to what you see on our access points. You can use the simple template setup, or you can also use the an external or a WYSIWYG. So if I enable the splash page, I can use HTML here. And then bandwidth limits. So I can do bandwidth limits per client or per interface. So that is also within these configurations. So we try to make this as simple as possible, as just adding or modifying configurations. So as you can see, this is a default setup, and I can modify this current interface, or I could add the interface. Pretty easy. I'll just touch on static routing. You can add static route rules if you need to, but that's also within this menu as well. Anything to add to that, Eddie, or you good? And Peter, if you any insight or any added information, please by all means just let us know.
Sure will.
So the EnGenius Security Gateway does have a stateful firewall with maximum throughput of over 2.3 gigabits, while still quickly blocking types of attacks that exploit protocol vulnerabilities. It will integrate corporate security policies in real time, I should say, filtering malicious internet traffic. So this is configurable within the interface, and I will drop it to there. So the ESG has a high efficient firewall to dynamically packet filter and monitor active connections and check whether incoming data packets correspond to those connections. It will then decide to grant or deny permissions for them to pass the firewall. So the ESG has, as I mentioned before, 2 WAN ports for internet connectivity or router connections, and enough LAN ports for a DMZ network to create a buffer between the internet and intranet. So you do have the ability to slide this gateway into an existing network to provide that firewall into place. So we really wanted to maximize the performance of the ESG so it could sit behind an existing router and offer a high efficiency firewall or even a VPN concentrator. So that's why we have that pass-through mode. This is another reason to have 2.5 gigabit WAN and, more importantly, LAN ports. A lot of people they think WAN ports, the reason you have 2.5 gigabit WAN ports is to connect to a higher speed ISP. Not necessarily. In a pass-through setup, you can use those WAN ports to connect to a router. So now you have those higher multi-gig ports to use in these types of situations. So the WAN ports can be connected to the existing router ports, so a high-speed rate can be achieved. So as I mentioned, we've hit close to or over 2.3 gigabits running the firewall from port to port, even with overhead. So just to give you an idea of the efficiency of the firewall in itself. Under the firewall, you can set outbound rules, port forwarding, one-to-one net, and you can allow different services. We will, just another takeaway, we will be releasing IDS, IPS, and content filtering in a later update. So just be aware that it will that will be coming down the pipeline as well. So under the menu, under configure, you have firewall, and then you have the different settings. So we try to keep it as simple as possible, just adding different rules under the different areas of outbound rules, port forwarding, one-to-one net, allowed services, and so on. So we try to make this as simple as possible to configure and to have up and running quickly. So another feature is that we're providing site-to-site VPN and client VPN as well. So normally a site-to-site VPN requires admins to enter in many parameters. I'm sure most of you are very familiar, like remote peer public IP, remote peer private subnets, IPsec policies, and pre-shared keys. The IPsec policies typically include more complicated settings, encryption type, authentication type, DHE groups, lifetime, etc. So it can be somewhat complicated. What can be worse is that the ISP may even change the WAN IP from time to time, which can cause the pre-configured VPN to disconnect. So the administrators monitoring the VPN will waste time troubleshooting the connection, and and they must make updates to the VPN configurations to overcome that issue. Whereas when you're using multiple ESG gateways, we wanted to make it as simple as possible in regards to configuring the VPN. So EnGenius has a auto VPN, which provides users a very easy way to configure, and admins can set up a site-to-site VPN in just a few clicks, and I'll kind of try to show that within the user interface. So when you're using ESG 510s and at multiple sites for the site-to-site VPNs, there's really minimal details that you need for the parameters. So you simply enable site-to-site VPN. You can use mesh or hub and spoke setup. You can choose which subnet or VLAN to use the VPN. You can enable the automatic net traversal, and then cloud will monitor that connection, and then admins can actually see a list of the VPNs. If you're familiar with our cloud interface, you can see we have like client list, we have AP list, we have switch list. You can also have a VPN list. So it shows you link statuses of your VPNs. And that's under the cloud manage interface and under VPN status. And I'll show you that in the cloud GUI as well. So VPN status, I think, is really important because it lets the administrator see the statuses of every VPN. And from the hub spoke information, admins can easily know the actual VPN topology as well. So there will be a topology view as on top of that. And that's a feature that's coming down the pipeline. So you don't have that visibility yet, but I'll show you that in just a moment within the presentation. But let me jump over to the interface. So under configuration, under gateway, you have site to site and then client VPN. Under site to site, you can simply enable site to site VPN, choose your type, either mesh VPN or hub and spoke. Local network to use VPN. Then you can set up net traversal, either auto or you can do a manual setup. You can actually set up non-EnGenius gateways. That's when you're going to get into more of the parameters that we were speaking to before. If you're using an ESG, it's going to be way easier. And then you can set up your VPN outbound rules as well here. So it's pretty easy. We actually have been testing this internally, VPN site to site and VPN client as well. And this process is probably one of the fastest processes. I don't know if Eddie, if you can speak to that, or if Peter, if you can speak to that, how easy it is when you're running two ESG 510s and setting up the VPNs, how easy that is, or how easy the VPN to client is easy to do. Anything you can add, Peter, anything that you can add, or any notes from there?
So the way you explained it, it's pretty straightforward. You just enable the site-to-site VPN toggle right there. And then since I have another ESG on let's say my house, correct? So it associated right away. So if you go to the VPN status, you will notice that it's live. So it's showing right there that the gateway that right now that we are in is the ESG 510. This is the FAE lab. And the one that's showing on the EnGenius peers, it's actually my home. And it's live, so I'm able to ping that subnet right there, the 192.168.20, and then share files between both locations.
Yeah, and so every peer that you have will show up under this link, and it will give you an online status, right, Peter?
That's correct, yes.
Yep. And then if you have non-EnGenius peers, it will also show in this list. And they will also show in a topology view that will be coming down the pipeline as well. So let's do it there. So as I mentioned before, EnGenius Cloud knows if the WAN IP changes, and it will automatically update the VPN peers that are within the list that I just showed you. So this is really a key feature. So like I said, it will manage or monitor the VPN connections, and it knows immediately if there's a change on the WAN IP. The WAN IP will automatically be updated to the other VPN peers to keep the VPN connection up. So it's really valuable to users that are using VPNs and they frequent see WAN IP changes and things like that. So a really nice feature to be added within this particular configuration or within this product. You do have the ability to enable auto NAT traversal, or you could define your own by configuring it manually. EnGenius auto NAT traversal function simplifies the setup. When there are routers in front of the ESG will communicate to the cloud its WAN IP in the port. The cloud will keep this information updated and share with the other peers. So we do have that ability. So it will work behind other routers, and it will auto update the other peers within the cloud. So just a heads up to that, and that is true with other ESG units within your system. So I mentioned at the beginning, under an organization where you have multiple networks, you can have multiple security gateways under each of those networks. So you can, it will update all those devices or all those gateways that have a VB connection with one another. So VPN status and topology view, admins will be able to drag and drop the ESG to Google Map, and VPN topology will show you the VPN tunnels in between the status, in between and the status, I should say. It will also indicate if the peer is non-EnGenius gateway as a blue color. So you will see EnGenius gateways and non-EnGenius or other vendor gateways. They'll just show up as a blue color, and then you have your different peers. That's the menu I just showed you when speaking with Peter. So you will have a status of the VPNs in a topology view. The topology view will be added. It's currently, if you go into the menu today, you will not see that as of right now, but that will be added prior to the delivery of the ESG to the channel. So that will be added. So creating a client VPN is also very easy. The admin simply needs to create a client VPN, set up DDNS to create the host name, set remote client subnets, and configure security. The remote user using a VPN client software can simply enter the ESG WAN IP, the cipher information, and the PSK to create the tunnel. So it's a very simple process to do. However, as mentioned, the WAN IP might change from time to time. So it's better to set up a DDNS to create a host name URL for the ESG. Then the DDNS will monitor the WAN IP change to update the actual IP for the host name. So you do want to make sure you configure that portion of it as well. So it's basically going in, creating a client VPN, setting up DDNS to create the host name, and then set up a remote client subnet and configuring the security of that. So under the menu, you're basically just going to configure gateway, client VPN, and we just had client VPN running. I think it's still running on a particular user, but just to give you an idea of the configuration, it's fairly straightforward and simple to use. Just make sure your client devices are set up, obviously, to be able to connect, but pretty straightforward. So we try to make this gateway as simple as possible in regards to configuring these different things, all the way down from a WAN interface to a LAN interface to VPN site-to-site, VPN or site-to-site or site-to-client. Firewall is fairly easy to set up. So we try to make it as very easy as possible, and we made the gateway in a way where it could go into multiple deployments. as the main router, secondary router, or even just a firewall, or even just a VPN concentrator. So we try to simplify the setup as easy as possible and putting it all under our one unified solution, the cloud interface. So with that said, I will open it up for any questions that you may have. We'll try to answer as much as possible. Just to give you an idea, the security gateway is set at an MSRP of $599. The gateway is set up, it's already set up in our authorized distribution channel, and it will be available, I want to say October of this year. So that's right around the corner. So you can already see your pricing. If you're an authorized partner, you can see your pricing with distribution. If you're an end user and you're working with one of our value-added partners that are out there, a lot of you are on today's webinar, you can reach out to your to that authorized partner and you can get pricing from them as well. And so it's set up in a channel. We have data sheets already. We have product page, category page. There's more material being built. And as I mentioned before, the cloud interface will be updated as we move forward and as we get closer to the launch of the product within the channel, actually shipping into the channel, into our users and customers.